Today we're going to cover caster, one of the major alignment angles that happens in the front of a race car. We want to make sure you know what caster is, how to adjust it, and how to use it to your benefit. We're also going to cover a few myths along the way. So let's get started. So to begin with, I think we need to know exactly what is caster. Caster, using my handy drawing, is the angle through the upper and lower ball joints. Obviously, we cannot run anything through the upper and lower ball joints and accurately measure that. But what we are measuring is the line, the imaginary line that runs through there, to see if it is either positive or negative. Positive caster is always to the back of the car. Negative is to the front of the car. One reason this is because we never want negative caster. Negative caster on the racetrack will make a car want to be darty, be erratic, and almost uncontrollable. Negative caster has very adverse effects. We always want to have positive caster. We might as well clear the air right off the front. What caster should you be running? There are a lot and a wide range of opinions. Years ago, we would have seen a left front tire have 1-2 degrees of caster tops, and we would see the front, the right front, have 3-4 degrees of caster. As we mentioned in another video, we're seeing, because of our pull down rig, and we're seeing as technology has advanced and cars have become tighter, that we're seeing larger caster splits. What's a caster split? A caster split is if we have our right front at, say, 4 degrees of caster and our left front at, say, 1 degree. The difference between the two is 3. That is our caster split. When we were talking about camber, you would have remembered that the camber always pulls to the more positive number. Caster is just the opposite. Caster will always pull to the more negative number, or the lower number. So one major function of caster that I forgot to mention is that caster provides directional stability. Not only if we have that caster split will it cause the car to want to pull to the left or the right, whichever has the most negative number, it will also cause directional stability, because caster, as we mentioned before, is the line through the upper and lower ball joints, and it's the equivalent of whether it's leaned, the top is leaned to the back or the top is leaned to the front. The top being leaned to the back is more positive, the top being leaned to the front is negative. Now, a real quick way of looking at this is a caster that you would find on a roll table or a chair or anything else. The reason we call this a caster is because the center line is off center from the mounting point. What this causes is it causes directional stability. As soon as you start pushing any wheel, chair, table that has casters on it, anything that has a caster on it, you'll always notice the caster wheel will always go to the back. It's the same idea on your race car. The more we put that positive caster through our ball joints, the more we lean the tire back, the more directional stability that it provides for the race car. It's very important to have that. Otherwise, when you go down the racetrack, the car will want to do this and dart, and it'll be really erratic and hard to follow. So another way that we can visualize this is with a spindle that would have been the exact same spindle as be on this car. If we're looking straight on this, we would have zero caster if the upper and lower ball joints were in perfect vertical line with each other. What we want is positive caster so that it leans to the back of the car. This is what gives us the effect of a caster on a chair or a table and gives the car the directional stability. We always want to have caster to the back. All right, so now we need to measure caster. To measure caster, I will first show you the preferred method, and then we're going to cover a method that some others use and some flaws in it. We need our bubble gauge. I mentioned this in another video. Joe's makes great products. They're not getting a penny for me saying that, or I'm not getting a penny for me saying that. I just recommend their gauge. They're very accurate. They work well. There's other good gauges out there, and you can get them with the magnetic base like this one, or you can also get them with the screw-on mount for the late model spindles. That said, the bubble gauge is the best way outside of a $40,000 alignment machine to measure caster. Caster requires a sweep in order to measure it. And a sweep is we're going to turn the wheel 20 degrees one direction, and then we're going to go back the other direction and go past it 20 degrees. The reason this is because caster is a theoretical line through the upper and lower ball joint. The only way we can measure that is with a sweep. It's the only accurate way to do it. So a lot of guys don't have the benefit of turn plates or setup plates, and that's okay. If you don't have that, it's not a big deal. There is another way that you can make that sweep and do it pretty accurately. A 1/2-cent trash bag. And if you're wondering, yes, I have used 1/2-cent trash bags to set caster before. All you have to do is open it up, and now you have a makeshift turn plate. You would want to jack the car up and put this under the car. Put this under the tire. That way you have a surface that can slide between to make turning the wheel easier. If you don't reduce that friction between the tire and the ground below you, it can give you adverse effects on your caster measurement. Another way to do this is with a turn plate. DRP Performance manufactures these. They're more cost effective than a traditional roller ball turn plate. Good set of roller ball turn plates, I mean, they'll run you $1,000 or $1,500. These are much more economical, and they use a Teflon sheet. You can put them on the ground, and the Teflon sheet reduces that friction. So it allows you to turn very smoothly. That's another method. Our preferred method for measuring caster is our setup plates. The reason we prefer our setup plates for measuring caster is because we use monoballs in the bottom of them, and you can see how free they roll. Once we put this on the car, we can easily make our caster sweep without any problems. Now, I've already put a setup plate on the other side. So I'm going to put a setup plate on this side, and then we'll come back and start measuring caster. All right, so we're back, and I've got the setup plates on both front tires. I don't have any on the back right now, but for a caster, we just need them on the front. One of the things that we really like about using setup plates such as ours is you can see how easily the car rolls. So we don't have to worry about other forces coming into play, especially when we go to start turning the wheel. So, the way we set caster is best set with the bubble gauge. So we're going to put the bubble gauge on. If you will notice on the bubble gauge, you'll see kind of a triangle on the end. This isn't for decoration. This is how we know 20 degrees, because this is a 20-degree angle. So, what we're going to do, you always turn so that the gauge goes towards the inside of the car, or towards the back of the car first. We're going to turn the wheel. Now, if you look down, you will see that I have made this parallel with the car. We now level the bubble gauge. Then we have this knob. The caster gauge is in the middle. We have this knob right here. We need to adjust the knob until it reads 0. Once it reads 0, we're ready to make the final sweep. The final sweep will go the opposite direction. Again, I've lined this edge up so it's parallel with the car. Now, we need to make sure our gauge is level, which it is. And now we can accurately read caster. Right now, this car has 4 degrees of caster on this side. Caster is a very simple angle to do as long as you have a little bit of guidance and understand what you're actually measuring. Now for a myth. We often get guys that want to use a digital gauge to read caster. And this is really nice in theory, but it's not accurate. I have even seen companies going as far as machining flat spots on the parts of the spindle so that this would mount to it, trying to make it more accurate. The problem isn't the spindle in measuring caster accurately with a digital gauge. The problem with measuring caster is, what do we level this gauge to? Because this gauge doesn't zero itself and doesn't have a natural level to it like the bubble gauge does. So, and I have asked this question to many people that are proponents of the digital gauge. And I've been told you measure it off the frame, or you zero it off the floor, or you do it on up here closer to the spindle. I've even been told you do it off the bottom of the ball joint down here. That doesn't work the way you think it would, because it's not accurate. I will show you. We know this car has 4 degrees of caster. If we straighten the wheel back up, and we just use the zeroed off the floor method, and we put this up here, if you want, you can see on the gauge, it's reading 87.3 degrees. So that would say that our caster is set at 2.7 degrees. However, with a bubble gauge, we accurately measured it at 4 degrees. If you're trying to use a digital gauge to read caster, you're probably only within a degree or so of accuracy. That's the best it can be. Caster is an angle that is sensitive enough that we need better accuracy than that. You need to be using a bubble gauge to measure caster accurately. You cannot do it with a digital gauge. So in order for us to adjust our caster, we would do most of that adjustment in the upper control arm. On this particular car, it has a fully adjustable upper control arm. It makes it really easy and convenient. If we wanted to add caster to this car, we would simply loosen the jam nuts up and we would shorten this bar here, meaning we would turn it so that it got shorter. That would pull the top of that spindle towards the back of the car. In doing that, it would increase the caster. If you start running out of adjustment this way, remember on this one we can adjust the front as well. So we could take this loose and we could extend out the front. So we can shorten the back, extend the front out, and adjust caster. Now remember, when you're making caster adjustments, it does affect camber. So you constantly have to be going back and checking your camber to make sure that camber and caster are set properly the way you want them. One other item I want to mention, and I'm going to turn this wheel back. We had measured 4 degrees of caster here once we leveled it. If we were to come up here and start making adjustments, we can make an adjustment and get a rough idea of where it should be. But before we commit that that is the final caster number, you always need to do another caster sweep. Each time you make changes, you need to make a caster sweep to ensure the accuracy of the numbers, because we're changing this geometrical line that runs through these ball joints, and by doing that, we also affect how this gauge was set up to begin with, because if you remember, we leveled it and zeroed it back here. When we sweep to the front, that's going to change as we make changes in this upper control arm. Also, some of you may have adjustment in the lower control arm that you can use as well if you need to. All right, so we've covered what caster is, how to measure it accurately, how to adjust it, and what caster does and how it affects the car. Hopefully this gives you some better guidance and helps you to understand more why caster is such an important part of a race car. All right, so we've covered caster, went over how to adjust it and what it does on the car. A few things I feel like I may have neglected or didn't fully explain during the video I want to cover. If you're using a upper control arm with a solid cross shaft, you're going to need to use a shim similar to this. You can get a 3/4 inch steering shaft and cut it to length. Don't use stacked washers. Stacked washers aren't very stable and they can cause some flex in that upper control arm. So be sure to actually cut you out some really good shims to use there. But you can use those in the front or the back to adjust that upper control arm to get that caster where you need. Also, if you're using or working on a dirt late model using those adjustable lower control arms, you can shift that ball joint to the front or the back, whichever way you need to go, in order to get that ball joint in place to get that caster set. That's another option. Just be careful. You can adjust caster to the point that you shorten your wheelbase. For those of you guys getting teched on wheelbase, you might want to keep an eye on that as well, because caster does affect wheelbase length. So make sure you pay attention to that. Other than that, I wanted to cover what kind of numbers you should expect. We're seeing a lot more caster split in the front, mainly because the cars are getting tighter, and as we tighten the cars up and we get more traction and more drive out of the back of the cars, we're having to use caster more to help turn the car. again, that caster will always pull to the less number or the more negative number. In our case, it would be the left front. So typically you're going to see 2 to 3 degrees caster on the left front. Mainly that's because on pull down rig we usually find that left front loses some caster as we pull it. So we're not seeing that 1 degree, 1.5 degree anymore. We usually seeing 2 to 3. On the right front, typically you're seeing anywhere from 8 to 10 degrees. Guys running street stocks, you're pretty much going to try and get all the caster and camber out of that right front that you can without hitting shocks and other things. So pretty much you're getting a pretty big split there in order to help turn the car. Other than that, if you have any comments, any questions, feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email, and leave comments down below. And if you liked the video, give us that thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give us that thumbs down. It's okay. We want your feedback. We also would like for you to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit that notifications bell. That way you can stay in touch with us. You can also reach us on Facebook and on Instagram. I'll be sure to post links to those in the description. Guys, we appreciate it, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.